Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. Today is the official start of hurricane season, and forecasters are predicting another busy storm season. The question, of course, is whether or not we're ready. And when it comes to the federal government under President Donald Trump, the answer is no, we're not. Between Trump and Elon Musk's Doge efforts, 30% of the FEMA workforce has been fired, and billions of dollars that are supposed to be sent to states, including Florida, have been held up or canceled. Trump and Musk have created so much chaos targeting FEMA that CBS News reported the agency has no strategic plan going into the hurricane season, and FEMA officials admitted in their own internal records that FEMA is not ready for this year's storms. Someone who knows the emergency management system well is Congressman Jared Moskowitz. Before going to Congress, he was the state's emergency management director. And so I wanted to ask him for his opinion about what's happening at FEMA.
I can tell you that I don't think FEMA's ready. I'm very worried that, based on what the Secretary of Homeland has done to FEMA, if we have a real storm this summer, Jim, a real storm going into an area like a Louisiana or a Mississippi or an Alabama or into South Carolina, North Carolina, up the coast, places that aren't used to it, that are going to rely more on FEMA, I think you could see FEMA fail in ways we haven't happened. Now, let me say something. The president was correct that FEMA needed reform. We've known that in the emergency management industry for years. It's why when I first got to Congress, I put forward the first FEMA reform bill, which was to get FEMA out of Homeland Security. Homeland is too big, it's too bureaucratic, it's disabusing FEMA by having them run the grants for all 22 other agencies, and they've not been able to focus on response and recovery as much. I want to get it out from Homeland, which will make it faster and improve in those areas. But what the secretary has done is she took something that needed reform and she broke it further. I gave the analysis the other day that I think she turned FEMA into the Newark airport.
But what steps did she do that led you to that conclusion?
Yeah, well, so she got rid of 30% of the workforce at FEMA. Okay, she got rid of some of the most senior people with the most senior knowledge and understanding. She froze $10 billion worth of grants that were already pre-approved under presidential declarations. Florida is owed $800 million. Now, why is that important? If you can't get that reimbursement money out, that means cities and counties who are waiting on that money don't have money to spend in the next response. If they don't have money to spend in the next response, that's going to slow response. Kevin Guthrie, right, is waiting for $800 million. He's waiting to pay vendors. If vendors haven't been paid from a previous hurricane season, which we've not seen before ever, then their subcontractors aren't going to be ready to perform.
Wait a second. I'm confused. Let me make sure I'm understanding what you're saying right. $800 million that essentially has already been spent on previous storms that the federal government acknowledges it owes the state of Florida and has been approved to be paid to the state of Florida. They're not paying the state of Florida anymore? That was one of the cuts they made?
The secretary has paused that grant, okay? She's paused all grants, in fact. But Florida is affected from categories, from still some stuff from Ian and then Helene and Milton. Yes, we're waiting on about $800 million of category A-B reimbursement. That's to cities, that's to counties, that's to vendors, that's to municipal electrical co-ops, okay, that are owed that money. And so, so what I'm saying is by holding that money, that's capital that can't be deployed in the next event. Additionally, they're not giving out declarations. They've made FEMA slower, right? The idea is to speed it up, right? To make it faster, make it more responsive. But by holding back these declarations, just ask the governor of Arkansas, who met the threshold under the Stafford Act and took weeks to get her declaration. We saw the same thing in Kentucky. Right, that is slowing the response because, again, if these cities and these counties, especially fiscally constrained areas, police departments, fire departments, if they don't know they're going to get reimbursed because they don't have a federal declaration, they're not going to respond as fast. They're not going to spend the money necessary. So what they've done is they've slowed everything down. They've made people, start to think like, hey, am I going to get reimbursed for that? Am I going to get reimbursed for this? And if you're doing that in emergency management, I can guarantee you, right, you're going to have a worse off response than you did than the FEMA that they found 6 months ago that needed help, but they've made it worse.
Governor Ron DeSantis said recently, I think if President Trump wants to block grant money to us and get FEMA out of it entirely, we would do even better. Because a lot of what we are doing is in spite of FEMA bureaucracy, not because of it. What's your response to what the governor is saying?
Well, so I actually have the bill, a bipartisan bill, to create those block grants. I agree with the governor on the block grants. Florida has a ton of experience doing block grants. I ran the citrus block grant after Irma, and I ran the timber block grant after Hurricane Michael, and that was money the federal government gave us, and we ran the grant program. So Florida can do that. Texas can do that. California can probably do that. The other states probably not. They don't have that same level of experience. The one caveat I would give is, yes, in the storms that we've seen over the last couple of years, Florida, which has one of the best emergency management departments in the country, if not the best, right, needs FEMA's reimbursement, but we could move the logistics. I will say this, though. When Dorian was coming, which was a once-in-a-generation storm, thankfully did not hit Florida, but it decimated the Bahamas, we would have needed FEMA because we would have needed DOD assets for an event like that. So if you did have a Category 5 storm, some sort of major event like a Hurricane Michael or a Dorian or an Andrew, Florida would not be able to handle that on its own. And I've talked to the speaker about it and to Steve Scalise, and I've said to them, both of them, gentlemen, you represent Louisiana. If a Category 4 storm, which has happened multiple times, came in from the Gulf into Louisiana, without FEMA, you go bankrupt. Not only do you go bankrupt, but Mississippi goes bankrupt, Alabama goes bankrupt. Those states go bankrupt.
Well, the administration would argue you don't need FEMA. The federal government will come in and provide what is necessary financially.
Well, I hope so. But right now, they're barely giving out declarations, which would allow that money to flow. I don't even know if they have the authority to do that, by the way. When you hit the threshold, Stafford Act money is supposed to come because that's in statute. And the secretary has paused all these grants. Again, you don't find that authority in 2 CFR 200, nor do you find that in the Stafford Act. But yeah, the whole idea is that money needs to come, and it needs to come quickly. FEMA created a program called expedited reimbursement, right? One of the big things we've heard, even the president has said it, is that they're not fast enough. They're not getting the money down fast enough, right? And that's why FEMA had that expedited program. The secretary has basically eliminated that. All expedited money is no longer expedited. It's coming much slower. And so, they've played around with this during tornado season. It's going to be interesting to see what they do when we have if we have a significant storm this season. I'm hoping we don't, Jim, because I think FEMA needs time to recover from what the secretary has done there. But if we do have a big storm this season, I'm real worried about where it's going to go and how the people are going to be affected.
Do you believe that Secretary Noem should resign or be fired?
Listen, that's a fun DC game. Should she resign? Should she be fired? I will tell you this. She is setting herself up to have a Michael Brown moment. And if that Michael Brown moment happens, then yes, she should be fired.
I want to turn to the reconciliation bill, the budget that was passed by one vote in the House. All Democrats, including yourself, voted against it. It's now in the Senate. We heard this week Elon Musk come out and trash the bill. We've heard Republican senators raise serious concerns, some because of the cuts to Medicaid, others because there aren't enough cuts.
Well, yeah, look, this is going to be very interesting. Donald Trump came out the other day and said, let the senators make whatever changes they want to make. Some will be minor, some might be significant. That can't be good news for Speaker Johnson, who rammed this bill through, gave everybody what they needed to try to get the votes. And now all of that looks like it's up in the air, which is something he said to his members wasn't the case. So you got Rand Paul that doesn't want to vote for the $5 trillion debt ceiling increase in the Senate. You got Josh Hawley and a crew not wanting to vote for the Medicaid cuts that would take 13 million people off of health insurance, right? Then you got senators that want deeper cuts, probably like Senator Scott. Then you have other senators that want bigger cuts to offset the deficit in other places, $2 trillion instead of the $1.5 trillion that the House cut. And then you have other senators that are very uncomfortable that this bill is going to add to the debt. Elon Musk came out today and said he was deeply disappointed that the bill is going to add to the debt. This is not what he had bargained for. And his exact quote at the end was, "Is you can have a big bill or you can have a beautiful bill, but you can't have both."
Does this put finally to rest the fact that Doge wasn't indeed a lie? That many of the cuts that Doge sought to make are back, the funding is back in this bill. That a lot of those cuts, first off, he was just cutting around the edges, and it was more policy that he was going after than real savings.
We have a $7 trillion budget. Obviously, there are savings in there. Also, people forget the letter E in Doge stood for efficiency. Lord knows I worked in government a long time. We're using old computer systems. Things are not efficient. We can make things more efficient. The FAA is proving that. And so I joined the caucus to have those conversations. The caucus met twice, and we were never involved in anything that Elon did. So the caucus turned out to be a complete and utter failure. So Elon did this on his own. He didn't involve Congress. He didn't try to figure out, where we could cut or where we could save money or what we could make more efficient. He did it all on his own. He said he would find $1 trillion. He didn't. He fell 85% short of that. He says he found $150 billion. That number is even a little sketchy. And then both in the continuing resolution that Congress passed and in the big, beautiful bill, it undoes some of these things that Elon says he was cutting. It refunds them, in fact, refunds positions, it refunds programs. And so, yeah, the reason my guess is Elon gave that statement is because his little experiment turned out to be a failure. And we were saying from the beginning, you can find all the clips, come to Congress, right? Tell us what you found, and then we'll look at it and we'll figure out where we can make these programmatic, systematic changes. I would have loved to have made government more efficient. Doge didn't make anything more efficient. There's not a single department in government that is more efficient now than before Elon found it.
CBS Miami is helping you get ready for hurricane season. Join hurricane specialist Ivan Cabrera and the next weather team for Survive the Season, Hurricane 2025. Our 1-hour special will have important information for you and your family. Watch Survive the Season, Hurricane 2025 tonight at 8 p.m., right after 60 Minutes. We hope to see you then. Now, still ahead, as immigration raids mount, what are the conditions like inside the detention centers here in South Florida? We'll have a report when we come back. Stay with us.